Welcome to Trulyfit, the online fitness marketplace connecting pros and clients through unique fitness business software.
Pat, thanks for hopping on the Trulyfit Podcast here. I have given you a formal introduction already, but I do want to go over something. Typically when I interview somebody who's outside of like the direct fitness marketplace, I want to compare you to somebody else in your industry and make sure we know the differences. So for example, like even a registered dietitian compared to a certified nutrition specialist, the average personal trainer doesn't always know that. What is the difference between someone who calls themselves a certified financial planner and someone who's just a financial advisor? Is there a difference?
Well, the certified financial advisor, like if you ever see it written, there's always like trademarks on it because it's a designation by a private organization that considers themselves the gold standard in the financial industry. One of the main things, other than all the tests we have to take, and like I think the areas that were tested on, like 72 different areas of finance. So it really should be like the full spectrum of your finances. Like if it involves money, we probably have to know something about it for those testings and those like this continuing education, things like that.
Yeah.
So that's what the CFP, if you see someone's in their bio, CFP, Certified Financial Planner, that means they pass that test. They have a certain number of hours, like similar to a lot of the designations. You have to have a testing requirement and an experience requirement, things like that. Then with a regular financial advisor, like one of the things I usually try to differentiate is calling it like the financial planner versus an investment advisor. Because to be an investment advisor, you just have to pass like a series exam. So for those unfamiliar with finance, like there's an organization called FINRA, that's the regulatory body. They're a private organization that basically works in conjunction with like the SEC, which is a federal organization. But long story short is like they'll offer like a Series 7, Series 63, and those people, you pass a test and then you're legally allowed to sell a security. I try to make those differentiations, and it's probably a longer answer than your audience is expecting.
No, it's good.
If you have those, I can, in my opinion, sell against that pretty quickly because you end up being just a financial salesperson. There's not a lot of in-depth knowledge of what you actually get. Like you're tested on like what's a mutual fund, and what I don't like about it is you tend to end up becoming a sales rep for a financial product. So not to say that's bad. Like people can have an investment advisor that's strictly looking at their investments and saying, hey, you wanted to have this type of portfolio, this is what you have, and blah, blah, blah. But when you sit down with someone who's a certified financial planner, most likely they're going to be looking at your entire financial picture and not just saying like, and the fiduciary standard is also different. Like if you're a broker, this is, again, getting more in depth, but if you're a broker, which means like you're selling commissions, mm-hmm. the legal requirement is that it's suitable. Whereas if you're a CFP to recommend an investment to someone, the legal requirement is like a fiduciary standard. So it has to be in your best interest. And they sound similar, but it's a pretty big legal distinction because I forget the actual definition, but someone could be suitable for an investment, meaning I'll give like an exaggerated example. Like if someone's got $1 million, it could be suitable for them to buy something really high risk, but if they don't have a tolerance for that risk, it's not in their best interest. So those standards are different for a reason, and like that's why a lot of times you'll see the people with the suitability standard pushing a lot of like the insurance products and stuff that's like, I think that's garbage, but like it gets more predatory when you don't have that fiduciary standard. So that's kind of the difference between like the investment advisory space versus the financial planning space. Usually that credential is forcing them to work at a higher level of fiduciary standard.
Yeah, which would, to me, it seems like they would have to take not just the objective measures, but more of like look at you personally and look at, again, like the subjective things about you. And like you said, look really into what is your risk? Where is this money coming in? How did you get this money? Not just can you do this, but like is this good for you and your family and your long-term like sort of like fiscal policies.
Yeah.
So,
Like I thought of a better example. Like if someone comes to you and they're like, I really want, maybe like if it's in the fitness world where you're like, well, I really want to build muscle. The fiduciary standard would be to put them on like a strength training routine versus if they said, I really want to build muscle and you just have them running on the treadmill nonstop, like that from a suitability standpoint might not be an infraction, but like from a fiduciary standpoint, like you'd be totally giving them advice that's not in their best interest. Like they specifically told you what they were trying to do and you just sort of gave them a backdoor way of getting there that maybe isn't too efficient. So, and that's pretty common in the financial space. Like it's very frustrating watching that because like the really big firms, like they just hire a bunch of sales reps and start pushing their product.
It's common in our space too, right? So we have people who are certified and know what they're talking about and have at least a base level background of what they should be doing. And then there's people who are not, or they have a weekend certification basically, right? Where they just show up and you almost can't not pass and you pay a certain amount of money. And before you know it, you're, a quote unquote expert in fitness. So I think it's really in every single occupation at some level, but it's just good to know the differences. So today we're going to do something a little bit different. I have prepared 5 questions. Pat has prepared 5 questions. He doesn't know what my questions are. I don't know what his questions are. And we're just going to shoot from the hip and go for it. I think there's so many overlaps in fitness and finance. Almost all of my anecdotes and analogies, you just made one from finance to fitness. Mine are always from fitness to finance. I don't know why, but those things just seem to like really work together. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to work together. I'm going to give you some fitness knowledge that you didn't know of, and you're going to give me some finance knowledge I didn't know of. I'll go first.
Okay.
I'm going to start with easy questions. I have an easy question. I have a fun question. I have a mental question. I have a question directed at trainers, and I have a question more directed, I guess would say at medical, but sort of like maybe just a higher level employee, and you'll see what I mean when I get to that. But we're going to start off with an easy question here. I actually don't have a will. I'm making a will this weekend with my wife. Should I reach out to my financial planner before I make my will? Do most people do that? If they don't, why don't they? And if they should, why should they?
If they're a certified financial planner, I would say yes. And here's the reason why. Because it's likely going to save you money because most likely they're not charging you by the hour, but they should know where your entire balance sheet is. Because once you sit down with a lawyer to make your will legally binding in the state that you live in, they're going to need to know about your assets. So it's probably helpful if your financial planner can just be like, yeah, like this is your balance sheet. This is your entire net worth. And start going through the process. Like I give all my clients a questionnaire. Like I asked a few estate planning attorneys for what they send to clients. This was years ago. And I kind of aggregated a bunch of the questionnaires together that I thought were like the most helpful questions. And I give that to my clients in advance because a lot of the process of sitting down to do your will, to do your estate planning, they're not complicated questions, but they're hard. Like one of them would be like, okay, you got young kids. Who's going to take care of them? And then both of you think of your siblings as a hypothetical example, and they could be out of state. One could have different financial status. So like picking those people is not necessarily complicated, but it's not easy either. So you want to have all of those decisions made when you're not sitting in front of somebody who's like billing you by the hour, because again, like they're not necessarily adding a lot to that conversation. That's an internal family question. So that's why I think you should sit down because like you're already having these conversations with your financial planner, financial advisor, whatever they call themselves. Again, it's semantics in a lot of ways, but because they're probably having those discussions with you already. Like, where's this money ultimately going to end up? Like college planning, homes for kids, like whatever it is. So I think that you're going to save yourself a lot of time by bringing those people into the conversation, because a lot of those things you've probably already discussed with them about what the bigger goals are in life.
That makes sense. You're just ironing out the details so that when you do walk into that lawyer's office, it's a shorter conversation. You already know your answers because you've did a thorough once over of all of your assets and what you want to do. And it's really just like, if there's 3 steps, first you talk to your wife, your significant other. The second is you talk to your financial planner, you get all those details in so that when you go in with a lawyer, it ends up being a faster, smoother process.
Yeah, and if you're working with someone who is on that comprehensive level, that's part of their training to like architect these plans. And then you just have a lawyer make it legally binding and or point out mistakes like, hey, this doesn't work in this state, or hey, that's not a good idea in this state. Like whatever it is, like you let them, the expert, come in and bind it all together, but you have the foundation of the architecture done by your financial expert.
Cool. Makes sense. I knew that you would know that answer, and I knew that you would give a good answer. So that's the easy question. They get harder from here on out. But you're up here on the docket.
Okay. I'll start. The first one I have on my list is probably not the easier one, so I'll skip that one, come back to it. This is almost like a two-parter, but so for a new fitness coach, who should your first hire be, and at what revenue level?
So you're saying I'm a fitness coach and I'm hiring a client.
No, I'm hiring my first like team member or help with the business. Like what revenue level do you bring on the first person, and who would that probably be?
So I think the first person that would probably be is, well, first actually let's talk about the money. So people are typically hired on in percentages for that. So let's say you're making 60% for that hour. So if you as a personal trainer and you're asking, so let me just be clear on this. If I'm a fitness coach and I'm hiring a trainer underneath me who's also going to be training clients. Is that what you're asking?
It could be whoever. It could
somebody
be
in my business. You're saying.
It could be a marketing person to help with social media. It could be a junior coach. Whatever you think is usually the best outlet.
I think it has to be a junior coach. It has to be somebody underneath you who's training, who you can give all of your easier clients to. So you want to, number one, you're taking a percentage of what they're getting. So let's go ahead and say they're charging $100 an hour, which would be a lot, to train a client. You're going to be taking maybe 20% of that or something, 30% of that, and then giving them the 60, 70, 80% of that other money. So you're getting money for doing nothing, for just passing on your easier clients to your junior trainer. You're giving them experience so that they're going to get better by working with the easier clients. So down the road, as they develop underneath you, you can start giving them more difficult clientele. So that's what I would say first. And then that also allows you to clean your plate off to do other things. So really how the arc of the trainer's career goes is that first you start off with no clients, then you get 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, and before you know it, you're booked. But you can only make as much money as there are in hours in the day. So especially if you're one-on-one personal training and not group training, we could talk about what small group training is and private group training. But if you're just doing one-on-one training, let's go ahead and say I only have the bandwidth for 10 clients a day, which would be the equivalent of 10 hours a day. Well, times that by however many hours you have in the week, let's say 50 hours a week you're willing to work, times the price you're making, that is your maximum amount. And once you've maxed out on that, where do you go next? So by having a trainer underneath you, like a junior trainer or junior coach, you can then push your easier clients to them, take a percentage of that. But when you clean your plate off, it's not just that you're filling it with new clients. You can really take a step back, a zoom out approach is what I would say, and then say, okay, now what's my third step to this business? Is it time to now hire marketing? Is it time to now hire another junior coach? Is it time for me to go in a different avenue or start these things? And I think the first step, again, is filling your schedule. The second step is getting a junior trainer to take on your easier clients. And then when you've cleared your schedule somewhat, then you could really take a good analysis of your business, because now you have secondary revenue coming in from that other trainer. So you don't have to worry about working those 40 or 50 hours a week.
That's great. Yeah, that's a perfect first hire.
Yeah, and some people might disagree. Some people might say, hey, don't you want to hire somebody who can like help you market? It's like, well, I don't want more clients than I can handle. So what is marketing helping me with? Like out and the other, again, I'll play devil's advocate. Someone might say, well, maybe you should just charge more and start thinking about like a higher level clientele package. But in our industry, even if you do that, then you're also just putting more energy and more effort in. So it's not like I'm going to do the same exact program. If I'm going to be charging you more, that means maybe I have to handle your nutrition, which means I have to overview like your diet each day, and I have to have conversations and check-ins with you about your diet. Or if you're like, hey, I'm just going to work with people who are also like training for something, let's say high level, like the Olympics. Like I'm going to work with these people who are going into this. It's like, okay, well now you have to dedicate more hours to research how you're going to work with them. And you have to check in on them all day. So like these things, you can't beat the system. Like if you're going to charge more for training, people expect more effort out of you and you have to give more. So I really think the only answer is to like clear hours off your plate and by hiring somebody underneath you.
Yeah. And working on the business, not as much in the business that way.
And exactly. And with us, it's such an advantage because you don't even need a space. Like I don't need a gym to hire somebody underneath me. Like I could just reach out to any junior trainer right now who's a virtual trainer, and I can pass my easy virtual training clients on to them. So I have no overhead. I'm just passing them on. They don't know what I'm charging that client because I'm going to send that trainer a certain percentage of the money that I'm charging the client because I'm giving them the client. So it's really a win-win. All right, it's back to me here. I'm going to go with a fun question. I feel like I know your answer, but I'm going to put you on the spot here. So again, I know a lot of these questions for both me and you are just going to have caveats. So there's no possible way in which you can be like, I'm not going to be able to describe all the variables going on, but you could sort of create your own caveats within each question to answer appropriately. But let's say you had a client who had an opportunity. They're in their late 20s and they say, hey, Pat, there's a gym in my hometown. It's going out of business. And I can get all the equipment in this gym for pennies on the dollar. And I can take over the rent. It's basically a turnkey business. I can just jump right into this business right away. But I have to liquidate my 401k to do it. It's going to cost me 60 grand. I got, 80, 90 grand in my 401k that I worked from when I was 20 to 29, and it's all sitting there. And I know that I should save for retirement. I know all of the right things, but I feel like this is a once-in-a-lifetime business opportunity. Would you just completely talk this person out of it, or would there be cases where you say, okay, I understand, maybe this is going to be the better decision?
I love this question because this is one of the things I push back against when people say they hate retirement accounts because it locks up your money. There's penalties to pull it out, things like that, which are true if you don't fully understand the capability of retirement plans. So I'll give a two-part answer. And like, I don't know if in the beginning, like my podcast is peppered with annoying disclaimers, but this is not advice for your specific situation. This is educational only. So
I'll give a long disclaimer on the front end.
So just with that disclaimer caveat. But the one rule of thumb that I think people often overlook with investing is that, and I forget how Buffett phrased it, but essentially like the best investment is what you understand. So the best investment, like I'll give you a very extreme example. I met someone at a financial event that was a pilot that was on the verge of retiring. He was about to buy, and this is the second part of the answer because there's a lot of flexibility in what you can do with retirement accounts. He was about to take his retirement account and buy a private jet that his employer was getting rid of because they were upgrading. Now, that would be a horrendous investment for me because I don't know anything. He's a private pilot that was like about to retire. So for him, he knew the quality of the plane. He knew how much it costs to run it. He knew that it had some certification that's hard to get. And he could see all the investment profitability in that purchase. So for him to spend millions of dollars on a private jet, very low to no risk. For me to do that would be insane. I'd probably lose all my money. So investing in in that scenario where they know the gym, they know the risks, they know the road to profitability, I love that because it's like, all right, you have a unique skill set. This could be an amazing return on investment for you compared to like the stock market where maybe you don't know what you're doing, or two, like maybe you think you can outperform it. So that's the first part. Like you should, if you want to lower the risk and increase the reward, invest in things that you thoroughly understand. And the second part to that is before you start rating your retirement accounts, there's what's called self-directing. And it doesn't get a lot of popularity or attention. Mainly, like anything, it's because the people who have the biggest dollars can't monetize this. Like the big companies that I won't name, they won't allow you to do this. Like if you call them up, like even now, like a perfect example, you call up like the big guys, like the TDs, the Fidelities, and say, hey, I want to use my 401k to buy crypto. They'll be like, you can't do that. So most people would think, oh, I guess it's not allowed. But the reality is it can't be done at those places. It can be done in real life. So you can buy operational businesses with 401ks. Like, so if you have a 401k or you've rolled to an IRA, you can buy a fitness business. Now there's complications involved if you're the one running the business as well, but it still can be done. And so for people listening that maybe have worked at a quote unquote 9 to 5 and they've amassed a few $100,000, there's ways to tap that don't involve pulling it out and paying penalties. So it doesn't have to be an either or. Like if you really have to, that's a decision you need to make. But before you start paying that 10% penalty, and again, this is why I always push back when people say, oh, well, I don't like retirement accounts because I can't access the money. It's like, well, what do you want to do with it? If your mindset is buying assets, then who cares? Like buy those assets, use the account. If your mindset is I want to raid my money to like go travel the world, it's like, well, yeah, then retirement accounts aren't going to benefit you. But if you want to buy real estate or crypto or whatever, I mean, the retirement accounts can own, this is again longer than I expected to go, but retirement accounts can own anything except for 3 things. They can't own insurance policies, they can't own a business that's an S corp, and they can't own collectibles. So you can't buy fine art, some coins and things like that. Like it's a gray area. So like, but outside of that, you can buy any type of business or investment that you can think of. So
during COVID, they suspended a lot of those like 10% fees. Isn't that correct? And you can just, you could have for a duration of time just taken that money and claimed that you were basically, obviously dealing with COVID related job disincentives where they closed your business down and you had no other way to get money.
Yeah, they suspended the penalties. They didn't suspend the taxation. Like you could break it out over multiple years, so that could help you. But like the people that are thinking of doing that, they really should consider what type of investment it is and look into what's called like self-directing a retirement account. There's not a lot of finance people that talk about it because again, the big firms can't easily monetize it. So if like for me, I love talking about it because I own my own firm. I can tell people to invest however they want to invest. I don't have I'm agnostic to what people do. I want you to invest in what you want. Because again, like I work with fitness people. I want a lot of them reinvest in their business. Like if you work at one of the big firms, they would hate that because they're like you listen to CNBC, like everything they want you to do is plunk every money into the stock market. It's like, that's not the entrepreneurial mindset.
No, not at all. I mean, first of all, nobody trusts it anyway. And it's too much, you're betting on something else. You're not betting on your own skill sets, like you said, right? Like the guy, the former jet pilot, is betting that he had enough connections in that industry where he can make this a side gig on his own, and he can get that plane fueled up for X amount of dollars, and he can get these 2 or 3 high-end clients to switch over from that company just to him because they really liked him, and he can make the side money. The trainer feels like, hey, I know this demographic in this part of town. I can take over this business. So yeah, I might take a 10% hit, but guess what? I if you don't look at it that way and you look at it, I also got this equipment for pennies on the dollar. I'm also getting a turnkey business opportunity where I don't have to like market and like change the signs and do anything else. I'm literally just walking in, taking over the business, and there's already clientele there. Well, would you have paid that 10% to get that in the first place? Like if you change that conversation around, like what does that 10% mean to you if you would have just paid into that business anyway to get that going? And I'm glad you said that, because I was under the impression that some financial advisors and some certified financial planners would just be like, no, we have hard, like steadfast rules where we just never liquidate.
I'm sure a lot of them have that because and again, just so people are aware, like those finance people, and myself included, if I manage your money, I charge a percentage of the assets I manage. So just like if that's how they get paid. So like anything, you can't take conflicts of interest down to zero, but just know like if they're recommending don't liquidate the money I manage, there is a portion of that where like that's coming from the top, like, hey, don't lose revenue for the firm. But just also along that same line of thinking, you can borrow from 401k plans. So like if you've got $100,000 in a 401k in that exact example, there's this whole world out there of people using their retirement accounts to invest in quote unquote normal investments. Like there's banks that lend inside of 401ks. Like there's a whole world out there that could get this done for you. So like one of the options could be you just borrow the money from yourself. You have to pay it back. The interest that you pay back, like again, if you bought that gym or you bought all the equipment, the interest you pay to yourself to refund it is also deductible by your business. So like there's a lot of really cool ways that you can make these things happen without doing like the quote unquote easy thing that people say is, okay, we'll just pull it out, pay penalties and interest or penalties and taxes, and then whatever's left, invest. It's like, well, there's other ways to do it. And this is why I really encourage people to work with people that are looking at the entire spectrum of finance, not just like, this is your portfolio and here's my advice, but looking at what's going on in your business, what's going on in your personal investments, because they play together very intimately. It would be like getting back to fitness. It would be like having the greatest fitness, like strength training routine, but a garbage diet and like nothing of discipline in the diet. It's like, well, what are your results going to be? Like everyone listening here knows exactly the outcome there. So
great answer. And you are up. It's my turn to feel the wrath here.
So this one's similar to what you touched on at the end of your last answer when you were saying like one of the things that might be contrarian is to just raise pricing. So the other end of that spectrum, what's the lowest a new coach should be charging for one-on-one coaching? So it's going to be gray area, but
yeah. Well, first let me let me unpack, and you can step in at any time. But the difference is sort of in coaching. So there could be like a virtual personal training session where Pat pops on the Zoom and I'm on there, and you have dumbbells 10 through 35s, and so do I, and I have a TRX suspension trainer, and you have a mat, and I'm walking you through a workout, and you're paying for that hour and that hour only. That is different than if I'm building you a plan. So if Pat's like, hey, Steve, my goal is like, I want to maybe gain 10 pounds of muscle over the course of like 5-6 months. So I want to just get bigger. I really want to focus on X, Y, and Z. So those sorts of things are different price ranges, because for one, you're just paying for my hour, me to design a workout for you, and then it's over. The other one, I'm going to need to check in on you. I'm going to need to write out your initial diet plans and all of this stuff. So I'll touch on the first one first, and then I'll go back to the second one. So if it's just an hour of my time working with you, I think $50 is absolutely minimum now in the industry, regardless of where you are. $50 an hour is the minimum. And it doesn't matter how you slice it. If you're taking that money off the books, which your certified financial planner will tell you not to do, if they're Venmoing you, you still want to report that. Pat's talked about that before. Or if you have a legitimate business, however you're going about this as a personal trainer and a health coach and a fitness coach, that's absolutely minimum. I would then look at that hour and not change that for all of the other things you're putting into it. So what I mean by that is, if I'm now coaching you and I have to, let's say, look over your diet plan. So I give you a diet plan, maybe you write down your macros and your calories and what you ate, and I have to review that. I'm going to be like a lawyer-esque and look at my time. Does this take me a full hour to review this and then type you out an email and say, hey, Pat, looks like you're doing good, but actually you're under calories here. We need you to be, in a caloric surplus. Right now you're in a caloric deficit. That's not good for our goals. You're trying to gain muscle. So let's add, 400 to 600 calories here. We can do that by adding this shake to your 2 o'clock meal and adding this thing to your 6 o'clock meal. I think we'll be okay for the next week. So if I'm going through that sort of process, I'm still going to charge you for that hour, my given time, which is probably another $50. So I think $50 is the minimum, but I think we do have to separate the coaches who are doing more than just the one-on-one personal training.
So if they're doing everything, like you said, that it's a customized fitness routine, diet, everything, if like they're like a full spectrum coach, trainer, what do you think the minimum is there?
So I still think for each individual hour that you think you're going to be working to build this client's thing, charging $50 is not a bad idea. So it might take me an hour every week to review your diet. So that's $50. Then we're training together 2 or 3 times a week. Let's say 3 times a week. That's $150. That's $200. Then we have a check-in call where we go over everything. That's another $50. Okay, so now we're up to $250 a week that I'm working with you. But that's 5 hours. That's 5 hours of my time that I'm giving out. Now, some people don't like to go about it that way. They just want to charge like an annual fee. Like, hey, this is my annual fee. We're going through this. We're going through that. I feel like clients' goals fall off when you do that. People think that, if you just charge for a year, people are going to be invested for the full year. I don't think that's the case. I think that the trainer gets lazy and the client gets lazy. They pay all their money up front, and then they don't have these check-in conversations and phone calls. The goals sorts of start to fade away a little bit. Maybe my original goal, again, was to gain 10 pounds of muscle over 6 months, but it's not working out in month 1 or 2. So I then just sort of take those goals back. The client knows they can't get their money back. They're already invested for them. I think having the client actually have to send you weekly amounts of money or bi-weekly amounts of money coming out, they then put it in their head, I need to also be putting this energy and effort in. Like, this money is continuing to come out of my account. Now, is that best for the trainer long term? The answer the trainer would say is no, because then what if they don't meet their goals and they back out on me? Well, guess what? If your client's not meeting their goals and they back out on you, then you're never going to grow your business model. So you have a problem in your business model. So you want to make sure your client is getting goals, so then they refer you to somebody else and then you get another client. So that's the whole purpose. Yeah, could you trick 5 or 6 or 7 people, excuse me, into paying you a year's worth of money for you to design services that don't work? Yeah, but then the gig is up, right? Then your clients don't make any progress, and you lose them as clients, and they never refer you, and you're starting over again. So I think I say this a lot: avoiding starting over is really good. You never want to start over. So
I completely agree with all that. It's like it goes with human nature to keep both of you earning it each whatever pay period you guys decide on.
Yeah, and people run their businesses different ways, and whether something is like, we also talked about, that's maybe a one-on-one business. If your business is going to like vertically scale or horizontally scale, that could change what you're doing and how you charge things. But I think for young coaches, for people who are looking to build their business, forget about the money. You have to be successful first. And for you to be successful, number one, you have to keep your clients on the hook. And number two, you want to be involved in thinking that you're earning this money, and that your client needs to think that I'm spending this money for good cause. And you're going to put more energy and effort in knowing each week there could be a paycheck coming to you or not coming to you, and do the right things, get your client to their goals, and then down the road, 2 or 3 years in, when you've proven yourself, then you can think about maybe charging in a different fashion.
Love that.
I'm going to go here with the mental question for you.
Okay.
Like we talked about before, there's so many crossovers between fitness and finance. And I have a guest on who is of the same profession you are, who wrote a book called The Money Nerve. And he's he's actually the CFO of the Comedy Store. So like the place that like in LA that like, Rogan and all those people talk about like in the podcast. So he's like the CFO there. But
That's pretty cool.
yeah, he talks about like the relationship that people have with money. Like they have a lot of like mental blocks, basically, right? Like,
Yeah.
like you sort of lie to yourself about money, and people do the same thing with fitness, right? We lie to ourselves. A lot of people who are really out of shape don't want to talk to me. I've even had like instances where like I'm in the grocery store with like past clients, and like you can tell how embarrassed they are. Number one, they don't want me seeing what's in their shopping cart because they think I'm going to judge them. But number two, they're like, it reminds them like, oh shit, like I'm not working out anymore. I'm not training. I don't care about my body. I used to like work out with a personal trainer. Now I don't. And like, it brings up these like weird emotions. And I think people have that same thing with money. It could be, number one, I'm like afraid to talk to a certified financial planner because like you're going to dig up the skeletons in my closet. Right. And then like number two, like, it's just like it brings to the realization of how much money you like maybe don't have, or like the places you put your money in wrong places. It's like this really shitty audit you have to do. How do you get around that with clients? Is that something you have to like sit down and talk to clients about? Do you have to convince people like, hey, this is for your long-term like better fiscal like health, and we just need to do this, although it's going to be tough?
Yeah, that's the hard part. Like even to what you touched on, like it's hard with clients, but what is a bummer about the industry in general is that exactly you said, like people feel, and I know why, the industry, like again, the big guys, like they marketed for decades. So I don't know how old your audience is, but for decades, the big guys are basically like, hey, get $1 million and come talk to us. And it's like, well, it'd be a lot easier to get $1 million if someone gave me some advice on like what mistakes to avoid along the way. Like the same thing in like fitness. Like if everyone walked around me like, well, get a 6-pack, then call a trainer. It'd be like, well, what the hell? Like that's, I need you guys to help me with the hard part.
Yeah.
So that's definitely part of it. Like, running into clients where like they have the mindset where money just disappears. And you can see it, like, we'll build a little mini nest egg for something, and then quote unquote something comes up and they wipe it out, and you're like, come on, like we like, I thought this was your goal. And so that's the hard part, because when you get into this business, and there's nothing, I don't know if it's changed, but there was nothing, I've been doing this coming up on 13 years. There's nothing that's taught about the money mindset. Like trying to deal with the fact like some people have that scarcity mindset where money just either they cling on to it really hard, or the opposite where they just blow it. And again, like you don't get taught about that stuff, the mindset side of it. And I know from yourself and others I talk to, like the mindset side of fitness is becoming way more popular, because you're like, well, how do I get people to stay on this life transformation without me? Like how they can graduate to it. And that's obviously peeling back the layers and trying to figure out like, why do you have that relationship with fitness or health or whatever it is? It's the same in finance. And I don't have a great answer for that, because people come to you with different ways. But the one thing that I try to emphasize with my clients is that like, I didn't come up knowing this stuff. Again, like I can't speak to other people, but like I didn't grow up knowing this stuff. Like I transitioned into finance from like a science, I was a biochemistry major. So I made a ton of the mistakes that I help people solve myself. And I made those mistakes. I mostly had to solve a lot of them for myself. And then I started teaching other people. But being inside of the industry, and this sort of gets back to one of your first questions, like I was inside of the industry making a ton of mistakes because all I had was like those series exams under my belt. So like you think you know what you're talking about, but you don't. Like you don't know how it all plays together. So like when people are getting financially naked, I'm right there with them. Like, there's no stupid questions. Like, I've probably made like half the mistakes that you're about to avoid. So like, but then on top of that, from a more strategic perspective, I try to build systems in people in places so that they can easily gauge when, like, for instance, like a budget, like just like with a diet, like, if you go out and drink and party or whatever it is, like I'm here in Vegas. So like you have a Vegas weekend and it's not the end of the world when people come back to like, all right, now I got to get back. But like, you need to have like those guardrails in place so people know when they're out of control. And then you just get back in line. So I feel like that's what the same with like budgeting and some of the basics of finance, where like you build all these systems and they just help keep you in line when like maybe you overspent. But like you don't have to like beat yourself up over it. Like we have a system in place where you can see that you overspent and like, okay, like you can't do that forever and probably can't do that for more than a few months in a row before it starts to really hurt. But those sorts of things help. Like ironically, like this morning, I was listening to Andy Frisella's podcast. I don't know if you listened to that one, Real AF. But he was actually talking. He was talking about that something similar today about how like how do you stay motivated when you've hit a certain level of success. And one of the things he said was like spend your money, and he clarified. He's like, I'm talking about investing it, like also giving it away for charity and things like that, but I liked what he said, like putting it to work and getting it out of your pocket is sometimes helpful as well. Like, so again, that's part of like the systems for people that are not good at money is getting it out of sight, out of mind psychologically. Like if you've never read the book Profit First, that's a big part of what I help people integrate is like get that money psychologically out of your pocket and put it where it needs to go, whether that's for your future self, whether that's for the IRS, but getting it out of the temptation zone, for lack of a better term, is probably a big part of like the mindset. Yeah.
And I think, there's crossovers again in fitness and finance. And I think that was a good way to put it, where you have these guardrails that you really need and you're going to go sort of off the wagon sometimes. You have to forget about it, have amnesia, don't worry about it. Just make sure that you sort of clean everything up and you're back to it. I think the maybe the one difference in finance and fitness, at least from my perspective, and you can disagree, is people are typically excited to start fitness journeys. Like they'll see something, it'll inspire them, and they'll be like, I'm ready to do this. Like, let's go, let's get started. And then they fail, but like maybe they'll come back and they fail. I don't know if people are excited to like audit their finances. I feel like they're more nervous. I feel like you have the harder job convincing people through the door to get through the door. Does that make sense? Like people are like excited to maybe work with me because they foresee like, oh, I can maybe look this way, or I can be healthier, and I can live longer. But like, I just feel like sometimes it's daunting, and it shouldn't be, right? It should, like, people should understand like, hey, you don't need to have millions of dollars, and you need to clean up your financial mistakes so that you can have a lot of money. And like, you shouldn't look at it as like a daunting process.
I think it depends on where they're starting out, because it's like sports, it's exciting. Like catching touchdowns and throwing touchdowns, like that gets the fans in the seats. Like that's exciting. The practice and the defense, like that's more gritty and unsexy. Yeah. So it depends. Like some people come in and like they've got all the negative things not on their plate. Like they don't have debt. They don't have issues with budgeting and saving money and spending less than they make. So they can sit down and be like, let's do the sexy stuff. Let's start buying assets. Let's invest. Whereas other people, they come in and it's like, I don't have any idea where with fitness, they have no clue what they're eating. They have no clue how much they're spending. They don't know anything about the risks in their life. Like, so they sit down and like, we're dealing with debt. We're dealing with, hey, like we need to add expenses because you don't have health insurance. Like, let's get that, so like they have to tackle a bunch of unsexy things. Like those people, I feel like, yeah, it might be dreading sitting down, but most of those people probably are in enough pain that it's worth it. But the one thing that I think is the differentiator between fitness and finance that I don't do a good enough job of emphasizing is that, like, if anything, it gets harder as you age to stay looking good, keeping that six pack or whatever it is. Whereas finance is the opposite. If you start early, because of compound interest, you can get to a point where you don't have to be as disciplined because that snowball is rolling downhill for you, where like your money is making you money and like you're killing it. Whereas fitness, like you always need to put the work in, and arguably when you're 50 versus 20, you're putting in a lot more work to get the certain result. So it's just like obviously a big plug to start early, because eventually you can have so much of your investments returning you money that it gets a lot easier.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, there's a compounding thing in fitness insofar as like the ease in which exercise becomes like enjoyable compounds, right? So if you've been working out nonstop for like 5 years, like exercise, like Pat wakes up in the morning and can't wait to go to the gym. It's the best part of his day at this point, right? You're not dreading it. You don't roll your eyes. You're looking at your watch saying, when is this client leaving? I can't wait to do shoulders today, right? So that's sort of the positive compounding. But you're right, your body is working against you, as opposed to your money working for you as you get older. The entrepreneur you just mentioned, of course, his name is out of my head now, has made, I believe, like 55% of his money 80% of his money since he was 55. What's his name? The most popular investor of all time.
Oh, Warren Buffett?
Warren Buffett, yeah. So apparently Warren Buffett has made 80% of his money from the age of 55 and on, both because of compounding, and then one would assume because of better decision making, right? Because if you've been making investments from, let's say, 15 to 55, you, number one, know what you're good at investing at, what you're bad, and you know all the mistakes you made, so then you avoid those mistakes.
100%. Yeah, he's a great example of that. There's a lot of famous entrepreneurs. I think the guy who invented KFC or one of those, like I think he didn't even launch his business till he was like 60. Like it was one of those, Colonel, I don't remember, but there was somebody that, like, some really famous guy that is like inspirational to people who are like, oh, I'm too old to start a business. Like, well, some guys started after retirement and now they're killing it. So
yeah, well, both fitness and finance, it's never too late to start.
Totally agree with you.
You are up.
All right. So this one might be easy. I'm not sure. What's the biggest mistake you see the fitness coaches making with their marketing?
I would say that they try to educate rather than inspire on the front end. So it seems cool to tell people like, hey, if you want to really activate your lats, you have to make sure that you have scapular protraction and then retraction and make sure you're like squeezing your core together and doing this. That's really not what people want to hear right away. What they want to hear is inspiration. They want you to show them, hey, this is where we could be. This is where you could be in a year. That's how you get clients, right? Not by showing how smart you are, by inspiring them. First you inspire them, that's how you grab a hold of them, and then you educate them. And I think too many fitness professionals think, I want to show people how smart I am. First of all, everyone knows you're making a video, so you could have just read that 10 seconds ago, just Googled it, and then made the video and chopped it up, and you really don't even know what you're talking about, right? So like you're not coming off as authentic anyway. People can tell if you're smart, right? They're intuitive, so you don't have to try to prove to people you're smart. But ultimately, inspiration is how you grab a hold of them, and then you can slowly educate them. And I think young fitness professionals don't think that way. They just get their first certification and they learned a few cool things and they want to tell everybody how to do these cool exercises, and that's just not going to get you clients. And it's actually something that I've really struggled with, right? So like I went ahead and wrote a book and I designed a course and I did all these things. And when I was pitching the book and the course, I was like pitching it to trainers, again, not inspiring them to say like, hey, you could advance your career, but hey, you can learn a lot. And that just didn't work. I couldn't say like, hey, you're going to learn a lot. I had to like sort of repurpose that and say, hey, you can make a lot of money. Basically, you can be better than you thought you can be. Not that you can learn a lot, and they're the same thing ultimately. But the inspiration before the education, I think, is very vital.
That's a great. I've never heard a phrase that way. I love that answer because I think that's so true. I mean, I'm certainly guilty of that, like putting up more educational, arguably boring content. So I totally agree with you. It's you're saying the same thing, like enticing them with the opportunity more than just, hey, here's what you're going to do per se.
Yeah, and the reason why certain people like a Steve doesn't want to do it in fitness and a Pat doesn't want to do it in finance is because we actually know our shit. So we're smarter maybe than people who do our jobs, and we want to let everyone know. But ultimately, that's just not how you're going to get clients.
Yeah.
You have to inspire before you educate, but it's really tough because we do have knowledge and we want to pass that knowledge on and we want to let people know, but it's something I have to fight against, and I know you'll have to fight against and people have to fight against, but it seems salesy, but it's not, because if you make your end goal, I want to help more people, I want to help more clients, then it's not salesy. Because again, like we talked about, I'm not that trainer who wants to sign you up for a year contract, do you a disservice, and then you quit on you. You're not the certified financial planner who's just gonna, tell them to put their money into, whatever, some sort of index fund. Well, okay, I know I can do that. I don't need your help for that. Yeah. So I think because of that, we have to just sort of swallow our egos and say, hey, if I got to be salesy, I have to be salesy. I'll get the client, and then I'll educate on the back end.
I think that's a great way to look at the marketing strategy.
Okay, so I'm going to. I want another easy question. I got a hard question. I have more than 5 questions here, so now I get to pick from these. All right, I'm going to go with another easy question. So it's just your answer. It doesn't matter. There's no particular answer here, but do you think that a certified financial planner should study more in the way of economics? And so let me unpack that a little bit. Don't I want my financial planner to be forecasting a little bit? Oh, hey, because of COVID, the supply chain screwed up, and there's less, there's a war in Ukraine, so there's not enough palladium. So I know you want to sell your car, but cars are going to be more expensive in 3 months. Don't I want my certified financial planner to do that? Is that something they do? And if not, why not? Wouldn't that be advantageous?
So, like fitness, the world of finance is getting more and more niche down, as it should be. So for some people, I would say yes. But again, I specialize in fitness business owners. That's in my industry, that's super niched. But it's getting that way on purpose. I know a colleague of mine, he only works with Google executives. So nobody knows their stock options and the tax ramifications and all the things that come with being a Google executive or Google high-end employee, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Maybe not Google executives, Google employees, whatever.
Sure.
But so he knows things that I would know nothing about. So for him, knowing about the economy and stuff, that would be helpful. But for his people, that's significantly less valuable than navigating selling their stock options and all that stuff. He knows their health insurance, stuff like that. So I would make sure you're just lined up with your finance person, specifically with what you're doing in life. Again, there's people that work with lawyers, people that work with executives, and they're going to know parts of the tax code, since obviously it's huge, that is specifically for you. In my world, I know I spend a lot of my time with the small business tax code and things like that. Like the levers that we can pull and make an impact, I think are far more valuable than trying to predict the GDP and the economy and things like that. Yeah. Because I don't know that makes a material impact on my clients in the short term. But depending on what you do, and also this is why you should have someone, in my opinion, that works in a team environment, because you need to bring in the experts. Like we started this conversation in the beginning, your financial planner is working with an estate planning attorney to get your will done and executed properly. So if there's a portion of your assets that are truly dependent on the global economic structure, they should be bringing in an expert that this is what we do. Put this money in this fund, and this is how we track it, and this is why we're experts. You have a background in hedge fund, bringing it. Should some of the money be allocated to those experts in the private equity space or the hedge fund space? That's what they do. They're the best in the world at trying to make those predictions, because in my opinion, it's not necessarily that your financial planner should know that, but if that's important to you and it's materially impactful to your financial goals, they better be bringing in specialists that can help you with that.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I never thought of that, because as personal trainers, we need to network with other specialists. I never thought oh, you're a certified financial planner can actually go inside of their network and bring in people. If I own a a golf club factory, and I get all my grips from the Philippines, and there's a tsunami or something, right? That's going on, and like I can't get the golf grips, and like I need to know like what my backup plan is necessarily, right? So I want somebody who understands the sort of the market over there. Okay, well I can't get them made in the Philippines, but I can get them made in Vietnam now. So like, what's the price differential and all this, and that's interesting that you guys can reach out to other experts and bring them in.
You should. Again, that's why I'm a big fan of like the independent financial planners, because they can do that sort of thing without like upper level management and be like, oh, we don't outsource to this company because we can't, or they're competitors or whatever. Like I have lawyers that I work with, accountants I work with. Like I have my tax designations from the IRS as an enrolled agent, but that's to do the tax planning, not to sit and file the paperwork with the IRS, because that's its own sort of skill set. So yeah, like I think anyone listening to this, if they're not in the fitness space or maybe they have a 9 to 5, your financial person should be an expert in what you're trying to do, or what you do for a living, or whatever it is, because that's where they're going to bring you the most value. And they're going to, because the world of finance is obviously extremely broad. So they should be an expert in the events that are occurring in your life. And they're going to be different. Like people that deal with retirees versus people that deal with young parents, the intricacies of student loans. Obviously, as we're recording this, that's a big topic that just got launched today.
Yeah.
So, but there's a lot of like details with Medicare and Social Security. So someone who specializes in retirement versus someone who specializes in student loan planning, they're both certified financial planners, but where they spend all their time is going to make a difference for a lot of people.
We have both the student loan that came down today, and then the Inflation Reduction Act that doesn't reduce inflation to come out last week. So there's a lot going on that we're probably not going to touch on any of that, but there's a lot going on in the
separate podcast
in the financial world, or a lot not going on. But I digress. Yeah, great answer. I didn't think of that, but it's great that you guys have specialists to reach out to.
All right. So this one I don't know if it's hard or easy for you. When it comes to all the different areas of business ownership for the fitness business people that are listening, what's the most important metric for them to be tracking in their business?
I think it's
sales, marketing, finance, whatever it is. What's the most important metric that you think people should be tracking?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. It depends where you are in your business and how you're running your business. So like, I have other businesses, and some of the businesses it's important, like when you look at like your Google Analytics, like you need to know like your conversion rate from your lead page or something, right? It's like, okay, well, how many people am I converting from my lead page to sign up as a customer, or like what's the dollar amount I'm making per customer? So if you have like, okay, there's exact metrics of that, right? So like for each customer, I'm averaging this amount of money, or for each dollar of advertising, this amount of money. I get that, and maybe at some point that's where you're at. And if you're already there, you probably don't need my help, right? If you're already looking at all those metrics and you're like that keyed in on using Google Analytics and knowing that, then you're doing a good job. And it's typically at that point, you just need to pour more money into it, right? You get your metrics to a certain level and like, okay, well, now this is just me putting more money in so that those metrics expand. So if I'm making $3 off of each person, okay, I just need more people now. But honestly, I know it sounds stupid. It should be the amount of hours that you're working on your business and not in your business, as stated before. That's a very important metric that sort of like, I would call it like, it's like a light switch. When you start to see that like inverse relationship, you're going to start to see like the money go up if you're doing the right things, because fitness professionals cap out so quickly. Like I just said, Pat, you get so happy, you get your first client, and if you do a really good job, you turn around, it's 2 years and your book is full, and there's just only so much money to be made, and they don't know what to do. There's a few options that you can do, like I talked about, like like group personal training. So it's not for everybody. So you have to really find the right demographic. Pat's not going to want to do that. Pat's not going to want to have like a personal training session probably with 3 other like guys his age. But a 48-year-old woman who's never worked out before has no problem grabbing 3 of her friends and paying $30 an hour each rather than them each paying $60 an hour separately or something, right? But that's how you make more money. You sort of bring 2 or 3 people of like fitness skill sets into there. But I digress. Yeah. Once you're able to see that metric of, okay, I used to work 50 hours a week. Now I'm only working 40 hours a week, but I'm using the other 10 to like hire these junior trainers underneath me. Or I'm using the other 10 to spend on my marketing and do this. Yes, all growth sort of looks like a staircase. And anyone who's not watching this, I'm like moving a staircase with my arm. You go up, and then again, like it's not like a parabola where you hit a climax quickly. Like you go up, and then there's some stagnation. And then you need to take that next step, and then you go up, and then there's some stagnation, and you take that step up. And I think that's what people need to be looking at. Like you're not going to make this instantaneous switch where I just switched this thing in my business model and I'm just like skyrocketing up. No, you're going to make a switch. You're going to there's going to be a little stagnation there in that graph, and then things are going to click. You're going to, those people underneath you are going to start making money, or that marketing technique is going to start working, and then boom, then you go up, and then you make another change, and then you go up. And I think ultimately, as a personal trainer, I honestly, Pat, I probably only know 2 really good personal trainers who are working into their late 50s. This is not something that we do for a long period of time. By the time you're like in your mid 30s, as a personal trainer, unless you start it really late, but most people are starting in their early 20s now as personal trainers. You got 15, 20 years, and then you have to find a better business model because you're going to be taxed, you're going to have kids, you're going to have all of these things going on. There's no way you're going to have the energy to sit there. And I don't think people understand how difficult it is. It's like, okay, so I'm not only, as a personal trainer, I'm doing part of what Pat does. I'm listening to people vent, right? People come to you, they're venting about all their problems and money and life. You have to know a little bit about the news and the weather and fitness trends, and people want to talk about sports and they want to talk about their family. In addition to that, you have to get them to their goals, and you have to remember workouts, and you have to do this, and then you have to demonstrate stuff. So it's taxing mentally and physically and psychologically, and you have to start to find ways sooner than later to say, how do I start working on my business, not in my business, and take those short-term, sometimes short pitfalls, but usually just stagnations, and then you'll see that growth come later on.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, for people that aren't tracking like with your hand movements, I totally agree. Like that's part of it. That's part of why you track the metrics, like same in fitness, like because the investment on what you do at that time, whether it's hiring somebody, that always will precede the return. Yes. So, your business might take a step backwards, but you track those metrics because, again, like you said, whether it's leads or whatever, at some point you need to sit back and evaluate, like, okay, which things will I continue doing? Which ones am I going to drop off? But that's why you need to measure it.
Yeah. And, like anything else, there's a subjective and an objective component to this, because there's also you thinking about, what do I enjoy in this process too? Because what's going to happen is, you're going to make let's say you make a ton of money, you have a bunch of clients because you're teaching, like I said, it's private group fitness classes. You have 3 or 4 people, you're charging each person $40, so you're making $120 an hour. It's like, okay, that's great, but you might find that that's not for you. You don't like it. It's sucking up too much of your energy and you can't do it. So you're going to have to trial and error a bunch of these things, but ultimately, you have to have hands off some of the normal day-to-day processes in order to really see your business take an uptick. And I don't want to guide anyone as to what, because some people want to go more the nutrition route. It's like, okay, I'm going to have more of a blanket nutrition program for people. Some people want to go, again, I'm going to hire junior trainers underneath me and funnel easier clients to them. Some people say, I want to educate other trainers, what I did. And there's a bunch of different avenues that you can go as a fitness professional. Do you want to educate? Do you want to again, have people underneath you? But ultimately, whatever it is that you're doing, you have to start working outside of just these one-on-one sort of personal training sessions, because they're taking up all your time and you're maxed out on money and you're never going to grow that way.
Yeah. No, that's probably one of the best takeaways is like scaling your time. Like, because even lawyers like that get paid an exorbitant amount for their time, the most successful ones build a firm and they start making money on the junior and the associate's time as well. Because again, like they can, even though they charge $1,000 an hour, they're capped on how much they can do per year. Like they're running on the same clock we are. So being able to scale your time is probably the most important thing in business.
Yeah, and then because you're going to have setbacks that you don't know about, so you want to be able to make sure you have that money coming in. So, for example, I had I had an inguinal hernia surgery. I don't know, it's probably like 3 or 4 years ago now. It was more long-term wear and tear than just like an acute injury, but I was out for 3 weeks, and if I'm not working, I'm not making any money. Thankfully,
Sure.
I had something going on in the background where I was making money at that time. I had another sort of side gig, like inside of fitness. So if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have been making any money. And I think trainers have to know that their bodies are their business, unlike a lot of other people. And your body's going to wear out. But you could also have an issue where, if Pat sprains his ankle, he does just as good of a job for any of his clients. If Pat has a good ankle or a bad ankle, not us, right? I might not be able to demonstrate those exercises that might inhibit me. So I think you have to really look to having other ways in which you're not solely relying upon your physical prowess, because it's wearing down.
That's perfect. That's a perfect answer.
So are you on question 5 here?
I think you just answered the metric for fitness.
Well, I have a question, another question for you. I don't even know what question I'm at here, Pat, because I wrote down.
I asked you 4, so I think I have 1 left. So you probably are not on number 5 now.
Okay, so this is one of those, just as you described my question. I have no idea if this question is going to be too specific for you, or if you've dealt with it before and you know the answer right away and you're like, this is easy. But it doesn't really happen in my profession. But in the medical profession, and there are medical professionals who listen to this, physicians, nurses, and then maybe high-level executives in fitness businesses, sometimes they have to move because they get a new job. And in that, they get a relocation like stipend or something, right? So it's usually like, okay, you get to relocate, we'll give you like 10 grand. That money, as far as I know, is taxable, right? So like I am then taxed on that money, whether you use it or not. So let's say I get a big moving truck, they move the whole house, and you move to, they drive me to Las Vegas. I'm moving next door to Pat. And is there a way to like beat the system for people? Like, can you like add it to your salary? Can you like pay your own way and get your money back? Like, doesn't it stink that they tell you get a relocation bonus, but like you have to pay the taxes on it?
So the problem in that scenario, if they're an employee, when that tax code changed in 2018 under Trump's administration, for business owners, real estate owners, man, things got great. They added a lot of great perks. If you're a regular W-2 employee for working for someone else, unfortunately, the tax code got a little worse for you, because it took away a lot of those employee deductions that people were using, like whatever the case may be, like teachers, doctors, like they lost a lot of those deductions. So in that regard, no, they wouldn't have a way around it. Like most employees, there's not a lot you can do. Like you get that reimbursement or you get that bonus, you just got to pay taxes on it, which is one of the reasons I'm such a big advocate on people having some sort of business. Like obviously people come to me like they're in the fitness business, but if you're training people on the side, whatever you're doing, if you're in the medical profession and you're also working for yourself on the side, then you have options. Just because maybe not that moving itself, but there's going to be expenses that you can bring into the business. Because if you had like obviously it's very popular now, like people leaving like New York, California to head to like Florida, Texas, Nevada, like where the taxes are lower. If you physically moved your LLC as well, like you probably legitimately moved your business. Now some of those moving expenses that are in your personal life, you can talk to your accountant, and they're probably legitimate business deductions because you probably moved the headquarters from California to Nevada or New Jersey to Florida. So
Interesting.
So whatever is given to you by your employer, unfortunately, there's not really much you can do. Like the tax code is not ideal for W-2 employees. It's like,
Yeah,
or
but
it's pretty straightforward, I should say.
I do think you gave a good workaround though. So like, let's go ahead and say there's a nurse and she's moving across the country and she's getting $6,000 to move her business from New Jersey to Florida, but her husband is a personal trainer and he owns his own business. They could just say, hey, we're not going to take this money that your company's giving you to move because then we have to pay taxes on it. Why don't we just pay out of pocket and then get that money back? No, because I guess they can't give you that money directly anyway. It's only used for the purpose of relocation.
I mean, it's part of my job to help people pay as little tax as possible. Yeah. But I also think that sometimes people get caught up too much in the tax and not paying taxes, where they're like I feel like it was maybe a month ago. It went viral that somebody that won like $1 billion in the lottery would only get like 450 million or something like that. And so people are like, as if that's horrible. Like, I mean, yes, that's a lot that he might have lost, but he still got 400, whatever it was, like million free money. So like, I don't think people should give up the income because they're paying taxes on it, because at least, I mean, as of right now, and
you're still net positive with the income.
Still net positive.
Yeah.
So, and I do think people get too caught up in that, like where they're, and as of right now, the tax code is not as punitive as it used to be. Like, just to give some background to people, back in the 60s, our tax code did ramp up to like 91%, which is crazy. So people making like, at the time, the equivalent of like $1 million a year, every dollar they made on top of that, they only got 9 cents out of it. So literally, millionaires did stop making money because they're like, well, why am I going to make an extra $1 million to make 90 grand? Like, everyone listening who's a business owner, you know how much headache that is to make $1 million in revenue. So like, so long story short, I wouldn't try to turn down a bonus or not qualify for certain income because of taxes. But that being said, if you are a business owner, please make sure you're working with an accountant, because they're probably, if they're decent, they're probably going to pay for themselves, because you have so much of the tax code to your disposal as a business owner, as a real estate owner. Again, like they're all business owners, whether it's, operationally or running a real piece of real estate, whatever it is. Highly recommend you work with someone who can help you. And then the last thing I'll say on taxes, because this is like sort of on that point, the goal of tax strategy is not to pay less taxes today. The goal is to pay less taxes over a lifetime. And what I mean by that is like sort of like what we're talking about now. Currently, we're still under the tax code that most people would agree is the most favorable it's been in a long time. So I am recommending to clients ways to pay more taxes now. And there's a lot of ways to do that, but like you're purposely paying more taxes now because over your lifetime, when that money should be taxed, we don't know where that tax bracket will be. And in theory, it'll be much higher. So over a lifetime, I think you're making strategic moves to pay more now. Some accountants don't like that because they're just in the mindset of like, okay, let's pay less tax today. They're not worrying about what that will do to your tax liability when you're 30 years older. So that sort of got off topic a little bit, but I think it's important to be said because people get confused when their financial person brings them an idea to increase their tax liability, but that's what they're doing. They're looking at like a forecast of what your income will be and your tax will be in decades from now.
Yeah, I mean, that just goes along with long-term goals, right? You want your certified financial planner to look at your long-term goals, and you want to trust that someone like you says, hey, listen, statistically speaking, the tax code is not going to get better. It's only going to get worse. So let's look at this over a 10-year plan, and if we have to pay more on the front end and pay less over the course of 10 years, and you have the money to do it, I guess it's different for somebody, right? And you would put that caveat in. if they're just starting their business or if they don't have the money, they need to reinvest somewhere else, you wouldn't make them do it. But if they have the money, why not be smart about it and pay more now and less over the course of 10 years?
And in that scenario, you could make the argument that that person not making a lot of money, not having their business where they want it to be because maybe they're brand new, you might be able to make the argument that paying more is even more in their best interest because their tax bracket and their tax situation is so low compared to once you're rocking and rolling and you're making multi six figures or higher, especially depending on what state you live in, like then it gets really expensive to try to move the money into that tax bracket. So talking to young people and getting this done while, even though it might feel painful, it's like you're going to be loving it that you paid in like a 12% tax bracket and then you pull the money out in 4 decades tax free. And, like all those different strategies that, again, it's important to have those conversations throughout the year because you sit down with your accountant and like maybe money is tight come April and then you can't do it. But when you have like 12 months to think about it and plan for it, that's where the real advantages kick in.
It's great info. Yeah, I will certainly make sure that my guy is looking into that.
I'm sure he is. Hopefully, most financial people should be looking at that stuff.
I think it's on you. I think this is
Yes,
it.
sir.
That's number 5.
So I think this is not too hard of a question, but I don't know if it's maybe outside of your wheelhouse. But let's see how it goes. But it ties into what you said in the answer to your last question about like if you're sick and can't work, like what can you do? So it's obviously very common. Like, so what advice would you give for a coach or any trainer that's looking to sign a deal with like a clothing brand or supplement affiliate when they're about to do that? Do you have any recommendations? And I don't know if you've had experience with this or you help. And as getting into like some legal stuff, but like what should they be considering or landmines to think about?
Yeah, there's a lot. So first, you're going to be giddy when somebody reaches out to you, obviously, especially if it's your first time. I would never answer on the spot. It's one of those like if you're, the old New York Jets head coach Herm Edwards said, give it 20 minutes before you press send. And he was talking to the young players coming into the NFL before they send a tweet out. It's like, if you're angry, if a team just cut you, if you lost a game, if you dropped a pass, whatever you think you're writing, write it down, wait 20 minutes, and if you still want to send it, then come back and send it. And I think that's, not exact advice I'm giving here, but similar, wherein don't answer right away. Take your time, do your due diligence on the company and what they represent, because the last thing you want to do is rush into something and be tied to this like stupid product. I've had trainers come to me before, be like, "Oh, I'm like tied to this company," and they like try to pitch it to me because they're really excited, and it's like one of like a fitness watch, and then you find out that like it's just a gimmick. Like this company really doesn't exist, and they're just like trying to get people to like promote their Instagram because they're making money on this or something. So there's a lot that's going on behind the scenes that you have to take your time, do your due diligence, and invest before you jump on with the company. So if anyone were to say like, "Hey, I need an answer in 24 hours," tell them like, "Well, this is probably not the place for me," right? You have to give me time to do my due diligence. But you're going to change throughout your career, probably drastically. Not only your belief system and how you should train people, but maybe your belief systems in general and who you are and how you do things. So tying yourself to certain things that are racy, I would really hesitate to do. Like I see these people out there that tie themselves to like, and they're in like Speedos, like half naked. It's like, okay, I get that that's what you want to do, but you're 19 and you don't have children yet. And this is forever. This is always on the internet. And I think you and I'm not like a prude, but when you're doing these sorts of things that are even slightly, again, racy, you have to think about what is this going to be in 10 or 15 or 20 years as far as like my reputation is concerned also. And like a lot of people now, Pat, work for themselves, but you might not always work for yourself. And if you're somebody like me, I'm really cautious about my podcast. I don't have any sponsors. I've had one sponsor so far. And it's because I don't know, if I do a really good job and like a bigger podcast organization like The Ringer or somebody comes to me and they want to pick me up and they go, we want to add your podcast to like our platform. Well, if I tied myself to like a bunch of stupid brands that were ridiculous, that were like, because they were paying me $100 or something like minuscule that wasn't helping me out. But I'm like now tied to that brand and I represented that brand and I did a read for them as if I used the product and liked the product. To me, it's almost never worth it. Now, what I will say is if the product is bland, for lack of a better term, if it's like, oh, it's just like a sports drink and like it doesn't have like this like racy affiliation or it's not like a deal where you're going to do it. Yeah, go ahead and do it. I still wouldn't be the guy who like promotes the health benefits of these things. And that's where people get caught up too. They want to start promoting all the health benefits. Even people as famous as Joe Rogan got caught up in that like bulletproof coffee nonsense where I can't think of that guy's name who came on the Rogan podcast, who's never allowed back on. And he said he invented like basically the stuff called the bulletproof coffee. They still sell it everywhere, right? And this guy's like a biohacker. His big deal, this was like 7 or 8 years ago. This was like back in the day. His thing was like, basically all these coffees, if you test them inside these facilities, are sitting in these factories for like X amount of time, and they have this like particular bacteria on it, and that bacteria is bad for your gut biome, and in addition to that bacteria being bad for your gut biome, it like lessens the caffeine and how your body's using and all this stuff. Well, guess what? It was all bullshit. It was all nonsense. It sounded great. It wasn't true. It got fact checked, and the guy's just a charlatan promoting his product, right? So
this is on Rogan's podcast?
Yeah, this was on Rogan's podcast. He had been on Rogan's podcast twice. And it's one of those things where like when Rogan had found out, he like apologized and like he won't even like speak the guy's name anymore because he feels like he was like, they pulled a fast one on him. So anyway, the coffee, you can buy the coffee at Target. It's still called, they call it the same name. I think it might be the same company, the same guy, who knows, maybe it's been repurposed, but these are the sorts of things you have to worry about, right? People tell you about the health benefits of X, Y, and Z in the fitness industry. This is going to be great for you. Promote this product. And maybe you think it's like just innocent and it's not a big deal. Well, it is a big deal if you're promoting like something that is going to be life-changing for somebody because, first of all, it's probably outside of your purview and your scope of understanding. We're personal trainers, right? I'm not a high-level, let's say, like gastroenterologist where I know what's going on with your gut biome. Like I don't know what's going on with your gut biome. I know that the powers that be that I listen to and respect tell me how important it is, but I haven't been in the lab doing the studies. So I'm not going to tell you that all these products do this. And I think ultimately that's what I would say. Take whatever those finances are, unless you're absolutely struggling in your business and you have no choice. Think about the long-term reputation of yourself. Think about, does this product represent something racy or something that's claiming medical or health benefits? Do I want to be tied to that? Have I done my due diligence? And take some time to think about it before you tie yourself to that in sort of a long-term fashion, because you might not always be working for yourself.
I think that's really a great way to look at it. Like the deceitfulness of the fitness industry. Obviously, everyone probably just can think of one or two things where it's like, oh my God, are people still pushing that stuff? But but what would you say, like, to take it to something more generic, like if it's apparel or something, like a shirt or pants or whatever it is, anything that you would caution him about in terms of the actual agreement itself? And I know that's maybe more of a question for a lawyer, but just with all your experience, I don't know if there's anything you'd help people with.
Yeah, I don't want to say with the agreement itself as far as like the legalese. I don't want to get into that, but I will say a lot of these brands almost want you to do like a pyramid scheme type thing, where you're not really making money until you get 2 or 3 people underneath you who are doing the same thing, and then they're getting 2 or 3 people underneath that. And that's what it turns into. It's like, oh yeah, you want to be a rep for this company, and it's like, yeah, cool, I'll send you a free pair of shorts, and then here's the next step. You have to get like 2 people underneath you to wear these pair of shorts and do this and do that. And then it ends up being a time suck, right? It's like again, where these people who do these pyramid schemes tell you like, I made $60,000 this year, I wasn't even working. It's like, yes, you were working. I'm not telling you you didn't make $60,000, but I have 50 emails in my inbox from you to like drink this special carrot juice. It's like, yeah, like you were working. You were sending out emails and you were like bugging all your family and friends. So like you're lying to yourself if you're telling me you're not working. You're going to these weird meetings at 8 p.m. on a Thursday where like, everyone's chanting about the product in like a cult. So don't don't lie to yourself. You are working for this stuff. Get the product that's going to allow you to do the least amount of work, right? So I want to sign up for a product that says, hey, listen, put this on your link tree. We'll give you 10% for anything you sell. That's it. We're as simple as that. We are an affiliate product. We are not tied with you as a team member. You don't work for us. We are simply an affiliate. I think the affiliate products are great. Make sure you see the number. Is it worth a 2%, 4%? Probably not, But yeah, if you can get a 10%, I've seen as high as 25% for things like CBD. Okay, again, you don't have to promote that the CBD is going to fix all of your problems. You can just say, hey, this is a health and wellness product. I use it. I like it. I recommend it. I'm not a physician. And give your caveats and your disclaimers and get your money, get your percentage, provided again that you don't think that your reputation is going to be, looked at in a negative light long term. But yeah, I would push for the affiliates and avoid being like a team member of some sort.
That's really about, I didn't know that about a lot of the more secretly kind of multi-level marketing schemes.
Especially the clothes. The clothes do that more than
really. That's good to know.
Yeah, they want you to wear the clothes, but then they want you to get other people to wear the clothes. The makeup, a lot of the stuff in the the female fitness, health, wellness realm does a little bit more of that. I think, again, whatever, if this sounds sexist, I think men are just less likely to do it, so they don't even try. That people don't try to do that with the men. They don't try to say like, "Hey, get 3 of your best friends to try this, and we'll send you a free box." Like, guys, like I'm not going to reach out to Pat and just be like, "Hey, Pat, I use this like, a really cool razor. I think you should use it." Like we're just that's just not us. I'm like I would be embarrassed to say that. Where girls are a little bit more likely to do that. So I think it's a little bit more in products that are geared towards women than in men. But yeah, it's unfortunately it's a big part of the fitness and health and wellness industry now.
I think that's super helpful because again, like you're talking about ways to make more for your time, and if some of these people, they might just be starting as a trainer but have a pretty decent following and influence, so they's not getting hooked up with the wrong affiliate or the wrong marketing partner, whatever they want to call it. I think that's super helpful advice.
Pat, this has been awesome. We'll have to do it again, and we'll put a different spin on it next time. We'll maybe, speaking of like racy, that we're talking about not signing up with racy affiliates, we'll make the questions more racy next time. You'll have to ask me really specific fitnessy questions that you don't want to ask anybody else, and I'll do the same in finance. But why don't you give the audience a recap here of you, where they can find everything about Pat Darby, where they can reach out to you if they have questions about potentially becoming a client, or where they can just see all your content.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you. This has been great. I like this rapid fire question. I think this is pretty unique. I like it. But yeah, people can find me. My company is Darby Business Advisors. I'm most active on Instagram. My handle is @thePatDarby. There's a lot of educational content there. Links in bio if you want to sit down. Like everything that we do, we sit down with like a full consultation. Because we articulated on this episode, but what people do with finance and tax, I feel like it gets very gray. So like, what are you actually signing up for when you work with an investment person or a financial person? So we sit down and map out what we're going to do for anything. So whether so we've basically 3 programs. They could be doing full personal wealth management, financial planning, like all the quote unquote normal personal household financial planning. Then we have like a full CFO program for online fitness professionals. That's very heavy in taxes, bookkeeping, all of that. And then most people, again, offer to do both. And that's what we recommend, because we want to see your personal finances and your business finances, and we're making recommendations with both of them. And this year we launched for the first time something that's like basically a business startup. And that's been pretty popular because for people who are just starting out, but they want to get all the banking stuff, if they're going to form an entity, how to pay themselves, all the basics structures. We get you on QuickBooks, everything's set up. It's a DIY program, so there's no commitment. We get you set up and you're off to the races. And then as you scale and as you grow, like we talk about, like who your first hires are going to be, and you want to outsource a lot of these financial things that are eating up your time, we've built the infrastructure for you, and then we can take over whatever you want to delegate. So those are 3 ways that we're helping people right now in the fitness space.
My guest today has been Pat Darby. Pat, thanks for joining the Trulyfit Podcast.
Thanks so much, Steve. Appreciate it.